This is my 2021 travel journal. Since the year started off in the middle of a pandemic, I began by just painting once a day to keep in practice, not knowing if I'd get a chance to travel at all. I would copy photos I took in Paris, Spain, or England, anything that would inspire me, and of course, David Bowie, whatever would get me through a cold January in lockdown. Then, by February, I decided to venture around town, mostly local haunts in Franklin, Tennessee, or Nashville. A few times a week, I'd pack up my Swiss medic bag, toss it into Esmeralda, and go sketch something close by. Usually from the comfort of the front seat of my '67 Cougar, just to be safe. As I filled in more and more pages, I began to find my comfort zone again. Compositions started to become more complex. I was having fun again. Then at the end of March, we got vaccinated. With my son having an autoimmune disease, we were being extra careful for so long. We needed a break. So we took a drive down to the beach for a few days. It was wonderful. On the way back, we saw the town of Spectre. In March, my father passed away. He was 91. The boys and I flew out to San Jose for the memorial in June. He was in the Army right after World War II. They played taps. The day after the memorial, I took the boys to San Francisco to cheer them up. We visited my old college, saw the Palace of Fine Arts, and ended the day surrounded by family before we flew home. In August, the boys left us for college. We were now empty nesters. In September, I visited my cousins in Connecticut. They love gambling and golf. I sketched. Then in October, Donna and I packed up the car and headed out west to see one of the twins. He'd been away from home for 2.5 months now and really missed the dog. We drove through Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas. We got to see the Wizard of Oz Museum and a giant egg, and then we hit Colorado. It was like everything changed and we were in the Old West. I even got to see Doc Holliday's grave. The next day we were in Utah, and it was as if we had hit Mars. The landscape was surreal. I wound up filling up 8 pages of my sketchbook just on this one day. We came across the Twin Rocks trading post. They were selling jewelry from artists of various indigenous nations. I bought a bracelet from Darren Suiestua of the Hopi Nation, and Donna's was made by Ki Yazi Jr. of the Navajo Nation. See, there's Mexican hat and a possibly balanced rock, and the spot where Forrest Gump decides to end his run across the nation. By day 4, we made it to California. I spent some days with my mom, helping her around the house. Then I took Donna to Carmel for a couple of nights, her favorite place in the world. The kids were gone, and it was good to just reconnect as a couple again. Then, a 7-hour drive north and we arrived at Humboldt State. Our son was reunited with his dog Arwen. Turning back home to Nashville, we drove through a giant redwood, saw a massive meteor crater in Arizona. Look at this thing. I spent $55 on a piece of meteorite that I'm sure isn't real, and found the Wigwam Motel on Route 66. This had to be where they got the idea for the cone-shaped motel and cars. The Continental Divide, and Santa Fe, New Mexico. Our next stop was Tucumari, New Mexico, which had a wonderful stretch of old Route 66. And while that wasn't the end of our trip, that was the end of my sketchbook. So what started out as another year in lockdown turned out to be a year of some family adventures, some personal loss, our boys leaving us for college, and a drive across country. All captured in my sketchbook to look back on one day. And now, time to start a new adventure.